You have spent a lot of time investing in India in the past, in your earlier avatar and now also. How do you see India positioned vis-a-vis other Asia-Pac markets? What is it that we could be lacking that we don't make the cut when it comes to infrastructure and real estate investment as much as some of the other peers may?
So I think from an offshore investor perspective, India probably is in its best light. I think to Sanjay's point that it's been in for a long, long time. I think the issue, and again, Shirish, and I had both worked at Morgan Stanley. I'd worked there before, but I think the Indian story, it's got huge potential upside, and I think at some point a bunch of people will make a lot of money here. I think on a relative perspective, it's a bit tough. I think the regulatory environment, the legal system, the premium on returns you can get here versus, say, somewhere in Australia or Singapore or Hong Kong or Japan makes the story to invest here difficult. I think to the extent that investors flow in, and you are starting to see a lot of the sovereign wealth groups plow into India, I think once you start seeing a lot more of these groups generate positive returns, more capital will flow. I think that's probably been one of the biggest obstacles so far, is that you just haven't had a lot of foreign investors make a lot of money here. You can easily kind of compare this to China, and in China, again, it's a very similar emerging market. It's huge, complex, difficult, but there's a lot of foreign investors that have made capital gains there significantly. And I think as soon as you kind of start seeing that happen repeatedly in India, then you'll see more capital want to come here.
Right, fair point. And Kishore, you want to add, you're the representative of the Indian real estate sector here. So at what stage is the sector in terms of its evolution? Are we really matching the international standards? Do you think that us being unorganized in some forms is also one of the things which is stopping the capital inflows as much as we would desire?
Yes, I think to understand where we are, we need to understand how the real estate sector grew. And it's been a very unorganized sector in the way that it never had entry barriers. And anybody who had money, and if you go back earlier, who had cash money and wanted to invest something, became a developer overnight. So it's always been very unorganized. And then again, the rules keep on varying from city to city and from state to state. So it's been very city focused, I would say not even state focused. So that's the kind of people who have come into the industry. And I don't think so, barring a few handful who have had a long-term vision, or maybe I say a long-term plan to be in the industry were there. But I think that things have changed a lot. One, I think so in the last 10 years, the volumes have grown very differently. And obviously things are more visible, and a lot of things which I think so earlier for many things could be brushed under the carpet doesn't happen now. So I think so we are very mature today, as I see, I talk as the industry as a whole. We are very matured. I think that there is a better understanding of what is what, and in terms of, and the government again has become very strong in terms of regulatory. The RERA, as we were discussing earlier, is going to be a very large, very a big landmark, which will see a lot of developers who are not able to keep up to that just fall off the line. So I think there is a need. People understand there is a need for more money. People understand there is a need to be transparent, and I think so, and create track records. So yes. I think that the maturity, if you see in the last 10 years in the real estate sector across various things, be it retail, hotel, hospitality, etc. I think there's a tremendous change, tremendous maturity.
Right. Matt, you have done a lot of work on attracting investments. Can you draw a parallel between how US did it and what India can do?
Well, I think about the competition for capital, and obviously the U.S. has been in a fairly good position and has had a disproportionate amount of the capital flowing into the U.S. But I think what is evolving, especially in the gateway markets, the 5 gateway markets, is a lot of these foreign investors trying to escape the monetary policy experiments that we're seeing around Asia and obviously in Europe, and it's really causing distortions in pricing. I think if you're looking at prime office assets in the gateway markets, if you look back from 2005 until today, and that's just the prior peak of the prior real estate market, those assets are up, in a meaningful amount. I mean, they've essentially doubled. And if you look at the assets in non-gateway markets, they're up 30%. So I think there's been a lot of capital obviously coming into the U.S. and that's a competitive environment as a result. And the surety and the safety that provides, I think, is important for a lot of these foreign capital investors.
Let me come to IFC's view then. Aryan, you are somebody who invests like $1.5 billion into the Indian markets every year. That's a huge amount of money. Which are the areas that you're really focusing on for investments and why?
Well, first of all, I must say that I came from Brazil to here, so of course I'm personally bullish in India. But IFC does $1.5 billion allocation in India, but ultimately India is also our largest portfolio. We're talking about $6 billion between equity and debt and across sectors. Financial sector, we have nearly half of it. Then we have manufacturing, infrastructure, health, education. So those are the key areas that we invest. I think overall, when you think about infrastructure, we do have a strong focus in wind and solar, right, the renewable space. And we see that it's going to be a more and more competitive space too, because, of course, India has a really, really ambitious agenda for the next 5 years in that space, right? So we do see that the shrinking margins when we think about our own investments in that niche. Housing, we do look a lot into affordable housing because, again, we try to do what? We couple returns with development impact. So for us, this matrix is the only way that we can do our investments. So when you look in the past, we did a lot of investment in the microfinance space in India. And as probably you're aware of, we have a very successful story in equity investments. And those investees, they're graduating to be small finance banks. Another space that we're looking right now that we find really interesting, it has to do with the promising scenario for India, is about distressed assets. I think when you look what has been done recently and what we're looking for regarding bankruptcy law, but also recognition of the problem, right? And that we believe that it's going to open up more space for future investments. So this is an area that we're looking very, very careful to.